COVID. So yeah, just be careful. This is a curious time, isn't it? It's a time where you want to have faith, you want to step out, but there's just practical realities. So in this, I've mentioned it in the past, I don't live in fear, but I still look when I stop off the curb. I still want to be careful, and I would encourage you to do the same. I was talking to somebody in Jerusalem today, and they were saying that in Israel it continues to be problematic. And I said, man, I really miss being there. Last year at this time we were in Israel with some of you, and I just said I miss it this year. But I said the same thing that the Jewish people have been saying every year for centuries, and that is next year in Jerusalem. So you never know. Maybe some of you listening to me today will want to join us next year in Jerusalem. Well, the previous 2 days this week I've been talking about that scripture verse in Lamentations chapter 3, where it talks about new every morning are his mercies, his compassions. And then it went on to say, great is thy faithfulness. And I've been just letting that mull over in my spirit, just thinking that every day I have another day, another opportunity, another opportunity to serve him, to do something of value, to make a difference. I hope most of you saw Pastor Tommy's message this last weekend when he spoke at Dream City Church. If you don't watch the church, go back and look at that service. It was one of his classic messages. It's the message called A Miracle in the House. And that got me to thinking that, every day, not only does the Lord provide, as we talked about, life, not only does he provide health, but he provides, as we talked about yesterday, strength. But you know what? Every day he also gives us new opportunities to do something for him, new opportunities to, make a difference. So I want you to go back and listen to that message that he gave. It's a profound message, because many times the miracle is in the house. We just don't see it. And there are other times when the opportunity comes along, and for whatever reason, we don't grab it. Billy Graham tells the story of how he and President John F. Kennedy, were at a certain event. And Billy writes that I had the flu, and after I gave my short talk and he gave his, we walked out of the hotel to his car together, as was our custom. Billy says at the curb, he turned to me, and the president said, Billy, could you ride back with me to the White House? I'd like to see you for a moment. Well, Billy said, Mr. President, he says, I've got a fever, and not only am I weak, but I don't want to give you this, whatever I've got. He said, could we wait and talk about it some other time? And it was a cold and snowy day, and as he stood there freezing, he realized he didn't have his overcoat. And the president said, oh, of course, he said graciously. And so they went their separate ways. And Billy writes that the two of them would never meet again. Later that year, Kennedy was shot. And Graham comments, he says, his hesitation at the car door and his request haunt me still. What was on his mind? And should I have gone with him? It was an unrecoverable moment. And when I read that, I thought, wow, how many unrecoverable moments have there been for me? I know sometimes I've thought that I should do something, I should go somewhere, I should say something, or maybe just give somebody else a word of encouragement, and the moment passed and I didn't do it. And I'm left wondering, well, what did I miss? Galatians chapter 6, verse 10. As we have therefore opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially unto them who are of the household of faith. So there's an encouragement. It's the same encouragement I've been giving you all week, right? That as you have opportunity, and sometimes you might not recognize it, sometimes you need to make opportunity. But as you have opportunity, do good unto all men. So as you have opportunity today, smile at somebody, give them a word of encouragement, pat them on the back, tell them they're doing a good job. And Colossians chapter 4, verse 5, walk in wisdom toward them that are without, redeeming the time. Let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer every man. And so the scripture reminds us that we are to take every opportunity. And when we're talking to people out in the world, let's realize that this may be the only opportunity that they have to hear about the gospel. And I'm saying that to myself because far too often I'm busy and I just go through life. I want to make sure that every day he's not only giving me life and he's giving me strength, but he's giving those two to me with a purpose. And what's the purpose? That I'm going to take the opportunities he brings my ways. Sometimes they may be soul winning. Sometimes they're opportunity to serve. Sometimes they're opportunity to share what God's given you. Sometimes they're just opportunities to be an encouragement. And God blesses us in that way. And we just need to be cognizant of the fact that we need to be aware of what God's bringing our way. Some years ago, there was an energetic young man began to work as a clerk in a hardware store. And like many old-time hardware stores, the inventory consisted of thousands of dollars worth of things that were either obsolete or seldom used, and they just weren't moving from stock. So the young man was smart enough to know that no business could carry such an inventory and still show a profit. So he proposed to his boss that there was a sale to get rid of the stuff. The boss was reluctant and rather skeptical, but finally agreed to let him set up a table in the middle of the store and try to sell off some of that oldest stuff. And so the young man set up the table and he priced every article at 10 cents. Well, people were just thrilled, and the sale was a huge success. And the young fellow got the permission to do it a second time. And the second time it went over even better than it did the first time. And so this young guy had an idea. He said, well, why shouldn't I set up a store that would sell only items that were either a nickel or a dime? So he thought he could run the store and he would get his boss to supply the capital and rent the store and all the rest of it. So the young man went to his boss, but the boss basically says, that plan will never work. You can't find enough items to sell a nickel or a dime. And the young guy was kind of discouraged, and then eventually went off and started a store on his own. And you perhaps have heard of him. His name was F.W. Woolworth. So years later, his old boss commented, he says, as near as I can figure it out, every word I used in turning Woolworth down has cost me $1 million. So I thought that was a neat story, because there was a huge opportunity, and the opportunity slipped by one person, another guy took it. If there's an opportunity to do something, sometimes we fail to act and somebody else does. Somebody else may get the blessing. Somebody else may, be able to do what God really had intended for you to do. And sometimes what was intended for you to do just doesn't get done. And that's really sad. But what I thought was interesting, this young guy had the great idea and his boss sort of was negative about it. And that goes back to Pastor Tommy's message over the weekend, that when God gives you a vision, God gives you a dream, one of the things you have to do is shut the door on the naysayers. There's always somebody, and there's always a little voice in your ear that will say, that's too difficult, it's too challenging, it's not going to work. And if you don't have the voice in your ear, somebody else will come along and whisper in the other ear. And so what does Tommy do? Pastor Tommy says, close the door, lock them out. And so that's my prayer for you today, that in the same way that the Lord gives you life and strength, He also gives you every day new opportunities to do something for Him. Maybe opportunities that will bless you. Maybe He's going to birth some idea in your mind that can turn into something amazing. So that's my prayer for today. Lord, help me to listen. Help me to be sensitive. Help me to recognize what you send my way, and help me to be faithful. And in the end, help me to be sure to come back to you and say, Lord, I thank you for your grace, for your mercy, for the ideas that you whisper into my heart and into my mind. And that's my prayer for you too. The Lord bless you. I'll be back again tomorrow, and I pray in the meantime that you seize an opportunity to do something that you haven't done before. More on that tomorrow. God bless you. Bye-bye.